The Packers offense is flying high thanks to Matt LaFleur and an MVP caliber year by Aaron Rodgers. The Packers defense, however, is very average. They have a ton of draft capital and talent invested on the defensive side of the ball with Kenny Clark, Za'Darius Smith, Kevin King, Jair Alexander, and Adrian Amos. In fact, 4 of their last 5 first-round picks were on defense, and all are starters right now. So why is the talent not matching the production? Part of it is that Mike Pettine, the Packers defensive coordinator, just flat out does not care about stopping the run. His scheme and plan reflects that, as he bases out a nickel personnel and asks a lot of his defensive tackles while allowing his edge players and Za'Darius Smith to roam free and freelance. That doesn't excuse poor run fits and putting defenders in places where they can't succeed, but there is some credence to the philosophy. If you imagine one of the best running backs this season in Dalvin Cook, he's averaging 5.2 yards per carry. And now you compare that to one of the worst quarterbacks this year in Mitchell Trubisky, who's averaging 6.1 yards per attempt. Not even completions, per attempt. So on a play-to-play basis, even if you have the best running back in football and the worst quarterback, it's still more valuable to attempt to pass than it is to run the ball. So if we look at what the Packers are doing through the lens of wanting to stop the passing threat first, the scheme makes a little bit more sense. Run defense all starts up front. Kenny Clark can really make the whole defense go, and a lot of things start and stop with him. When he's playing well, he's a strong force that eats up double teams or dominates single blocks to free up those smaller nickel linebackers to make plays. A big problem with Pettine's run defense is that if you're going to base out of smaller personnel, it'll be much harder for them to shed blocks and stand up to bigger blockers. So if that defensive line isn't doing their job and keeping those linebackers clean, you're going to have some big problems. And that's part of what's happening right now. Kenny Clark hasn't played up to his 2019 season. He's missed some time from injury and has especially had trouble anchoring versus double teams. Part of that reason is that Pettine asks his defensive linemen to two-gap a good amount of the time, which takes away his ability to play fast and aggressive. Aside from Kenny Clark, the rest of the Packers' defensive tackles are inconsistent and none are reliable two-gappers. When your best defensive tackle is being driven 4 to 5 yards downfield and you have linebackers that are already struggling and smaller sized, it makes it really difficult to plug gaps and scrape across traffic. All the Packers linebackers have trouble fitting their gaps consistently, but the defensive line isn't making their life very easy. As Clark is driven downfield here, that puts the linebacker Kamal Martin in a bind. He's forced to pick which side of the double team to plug, and he picks incorrectly. Martin is responsible for the B gap to his side as the other defensive linemen are controlling their gaps, and Chris Barnes is sifting over the top to meet the fullback. With Clark being driven back into his lap, Martin now loses sight of the running back Dalvin Cook, as Cook does a good job of pressing the play side. This forces Martin to go to the wrong side of the double team, which opens up his original gap for Dalvin to run into for an explosive gain. While Clark has been less of a force this season, Za'Darius and Preston Smith have also been undisciplined in holding the edge. With Za'Darius, part of that is being allowed to freelance. The plays he does make can be incredibly impactful, but it does also impact run fits and playing disciplined run defense. In the context of Pettine's philosophy though, he really doesn't care if you run the ball on him, so he's willing to play that game and get those impact plays from Za'Darius even if it opens them up to being gashed at times. So nobody in the front four is playing very good football in the run game, and neither are the linebackers. Often the linebackers will misalign or Pettine will put them in a position where they're going to be attacked in space. Here against the Bears, Kirksey is splitting the difference between the number 3 receiver and the offensive tackle and is playing at will linebacker. He has both run fit responsibility in the B gap and needs to flow to his coverage. Against an RPO team like the Bears, that makes him the read man. Trubisky is reading if he fills or if he drops to cover the bubble. The thing is, it looks like Savage, the safety, is operating with a trigger call on that bubble. So he's going to fly down to the bubble if he sees it. As a result, Kirksey doesn't really have to hold his coverage outside and can cut his split inside to be a quicker fill in the B gap. However, he plays right in the middle and leaves the B gap wide open. Savage has come down on the bubble, the other 2 linebackers are filling the same hole to the other side, and it's a huge gain for Montgomery to start off the game. Also of some note is the fact that Montgomery is actually running away from Kirksey. Montgomery isn't exactly the fastest guy and ran a 4.6 4.40, so if a relatively slow running back is running away from you, there's kind of a problem for you at linebacker. That lack of speed leaves you vulnerable, and the Colts exploited that lack of speed by forcing Kirksey into coverage on a shallow drag by Michael Pittman. Kirksey just doesn't have the speed to run with guys, and while he was supposed to be a guy that could cover better than Blake Martinez, he's not living up to that end of the bargain. The Packers linebackers just aren't playing sound football and show a lack of understanding about where things are going and who has what responsibility. Here on an outside zone by the Colts, the Packers again do a poor job of setting the edge as Rashawn Gary shoots inside and Kevin King can't get off his block. Kirksey, instead of flowing over the top, plugs the A-gap on the outside run, which is really the weak side linebacker's job. This forces that weak side linebacker Kamal Martin to now try to race the running back to the edge instead of Kirksey, who would have had leverage to beat him there. Then you throw in your smaller nickel linebackers in there like Chandon Sullivan and Raven Green, or bring Darnell Savage into the box, and they have trouble getting off blocks and making plays on bigger running backs. There's a routine lack of fitting in gaps by the linebackers and getting over aggressive, which opens up holes outside. Combined with the Packers' struggle to hold the edge, that leads to big gains. The defensive line doesn't force double teams long enough, and the linebackers aren't good enough at reading and plugging efficiently. Here, Chris Barnes shoots the A gap, and there's nobody left to fill the B gap. If he instead scrapes, he's now able to fill the B gap, and his weak side linebacker could fill the A. The Packers linebackers especially have trouble with crunch blocks and power. They don't flow and change their gaps to match the additional blockers coming to the other side of the ball. Against the Eagles here, Christian Kirksey is late to flow at the pulling guard and then overshoots the hole. The defensive line is easily washed down, and it leaves a huge gap for Jordan Howard to run through. This issue pops up in every game. The Vikings are running split zone here, and again a defensive lineman gets doubled into the linebacker's lap. The linebacker chooses the inside gap of the double team, and the running back easily cuts off of it, and there's nobody there to tackle him. The Packers are definitely not a strong run defending team. They have the players, but none of them are playing well up front. Ultimately though, does it matter? I just laid out all these issues, and there's still an above average run defense, even with light boxes, linebackers reading poorly, and asking too much of your defensive tackles. Could it be better? Absolutely. Is it going to be the reason the Packers don't make it to the Super Bowl? Maybe. But if your team's one fatal flaw is having a slightly average run defense, you're doing some good things. It might not be sunshine and rainbows on that side of the ball all the time, but the Packers' best run defense might be their offense scoring enough points to take teams out of running the ball. And that, the Packers can definitely do. Hey guys, make sure to check out the Patreon for weekly game picks, some extra bonus content and video breakdowns every week. There's also early releases for these full breakdowns. You can donate just $1 a month, and that gives you access to all of it. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and until next time, I'm Casey Sully, and I'll see you on the next film breakdown.